The scorching sun beat down on Corporal Lee Hyun's back as he walked his usual patrol route along the Mexican border. Sweat dripped from his forehead, and his water bottle was already half empty, even though it was only 10 in the morning. The Mojave Desert was unforgiving, but Hyun had walked this same path dozens of times without incident. That morning started differently when a bright flash lit up the sky behind the rocky hills. At first, Hyun thought it might be military aircraft practicing maneuvers, but the sound that followed was unlike anything he had ever heard. A deep, rumbling crash that shook the ground beneath his boots. Hyun grabbed his radio to report the incident, but something told him to investigate first. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was his training as a medic that made him think someone might need help. He climbed over the rocky terrain toward the source of the crash, his rifle ready but his medical kit bouncing against his hip. What he found changed everything. A massive object, unlike any aircraft he had seen, was buried nose first in the sand. The metal was smooth and seemed to shimmer with an odd blue-green color that hurt his eyes to look at directly. Steam rose from the wreckage, and there was a strange humming sound coming from inside. Hyun approached carefully, calling out in both English and Spanish, but got no response. A large crack ran along the side of the vessel, and through it he could see movement inside. Someone was in there, and they might be hurt. He squeezed through the opening, his heart pounding. The inside was filled with lights and controls that made no sense to him. Everything looked too advanced, too clean, too different from human technology. But what made him freeze completely was the figure lying on the floor. She was tall, maybe 6 feet, with skin that looked like it was made of crystal. Her armor was beautiful but cracked, and underneath it, silver liquid was pooling on the floor. Blood, Hyun realized, but not like any blood he had ever seen. Her breathing was shallow and rapid. This was no human. Hyun's medic training kicked in before his brain could fully process what he was seeing. Injured person equals help needed. It was that simple. He knelt beside her and checked for a pulse. Her skin was warm but felt different, almost like touching smooth stone. Her pulse was there but weak and too fast. The silver blood was coming from a deep wound in her side. Hyun opened his medical kit and started working, using pressure bandages to stop the bleeding. As he worked, her eyes opened. They were completely black, like looking into deep space, but somehow he could tell she was looking at him. She spoke, but the words were like music, mixed with whispers. Nothing he could understand. Then, in broken English, she said, "Help." "Please, I'm trying," Hyun said, working on her wounds. "What's your name?" "Nara," she whispered. That's when Hyun heard voices outside, rough voices speaking English with heavy accents. Scavengers, people who made their living stealing from crash sites and smuggling operations. They must have seen the crash too. "Check inside that thing," one voice called out. "Might be worth something." Hyun's radio crackled to life just as the first scavenger appeared at the opening. "Hey, soldier boy, step away from our find." "This is a military matter," Hyun said, but he was outnumbered 3-1. The lead scavenger pulled out a pistol. "Nothing military about this. Now move." The confrontation was brief but violent. Hyun managed to disable 2 of them, but not before. One of them smashed his radio with a crowbar. The third scavenger ran when he realized his friends were down. Now Hyun was alone in the desert, with an injured alien, no way to call for backup, and the nearest military base was 90 miles away through some of the hottest, most unforgiving terrain in North America. The temperature was already climbing toward 100 degrees, and it was still morning. Nara tried to sit up, but collapsed back down. "Cannot." "Walk," she said. Hyun looked at his water supply, then at the vast desert stretching in every direction. He had maybe enough water for one person to survive the journey to base. Maybe. For 2 people, one of them injured, it was basically impossible. But leaving her here meant she would die, and Hyun had never left anyone behind. Hyun looked around the crashed ship for anything he could use. The alien metal was too smooth and strange to work with, but he found some fabric that seemed strong enough. Using pieces of the wreckage and his own gear, he built a stretcher that could drag behind him across the sand. Getting Nara onto the Stretcher was harder than he expected. She was tall and her crystal-like armor made her heavy. Every time he moved her, she made soft sounds of pain that reminded him she was more than just some strange creature. She was a living being who was hurting. "This is going to be rough," Hyun told her as he adjusted the straps. "But I'll get you out of here." She opened those deep black eyes and looked at him. "Why?" she whispered. It was a simple question, but Hyun didn't have a simple answer. Why? Was he risking his life for someone he didn't know? Someone who wasn't even human? He just shrugged and started walking. The first few hours weren't too bad. The morning sun was hot but manageable, and Hyun fell into a steady rhythm. Step, drag, step, drag. The stretcher left a long trail in the sand behind them. But as the sun climbed higher, the desert became a furnace. By noon, the temperature hit 110 degrees. Hyun's uniform was soaked with sweat, and every breath felt like inhaling fire. He stopped frequently to check on Nara and give her small sips of water from his canteen. During one of these stops, she started talking. Her voice was weak, but the words came out in a mix of her musical language and broken English. "My people, they want me dead," she said, her breathing labored. "I am queen, but I question old ways." Hyun didn't fully understand, but it sounded familiar. Someone in power who asked too many questions and made enemies. He had seen it in human politics, too. "Who's after you?" he asked while checking. "Her bandages. Council of warriors. They say I am weak. Too soft." She tried to smile, but it looked painful. "They hire killers to make it look like accident." "Well, their killers failed," Hyun said, offering her another sip of water. "You're still here." As the afternoon wore on, Hyun's boots started falling apart. The rubber soles couldn't handle the hot sand and sharp rocks. By evening, he was walking. On pieces of cardboard he tore from his medical kit packaging. His feet were covered in blisters, and every step was agony. Nara noticed his struggle. During one of their rest stops, she tried to sit up. "Leave me," she said. "You die for nothing." "Not happening," Hyun replied, rationing out their water. Each of them got only a few sips now. "We both make it or neither of us does." That night was the worst. Desert temperatures dropped fast after sunset, and Nara started shivering uncontrollably. Hyun gave her his jacket and used his own body heat to keep her warm. He barely slept, listening to her breathing and making sure she didn't slip away during the night. On the second day, things got worse. Hyun's lips cracked and bled from dehydration. His vision started playing tricks on him, showing water where there was only sand. But he kept walking, step after painful step. Nara drifted in and out of consciousness more frequently. Sometimes she spoke in her own language, words that sounded like singing. Other times she was completely still, and Hyun would panic until he saw her chest rising and falling. "My real name is Nara Thelvani," she said during one of her conscious moments. "Queen of the Velkari." "Queen, huh?" Hyun managed to croak through his dry throat. "Well, Your Majesty, we're both going to die out here if we don't reach base soon. You still can't make jokes," she said, and this time her smile looked genuine. By the end of the second day, Hyun had given Nara most of his remaining water. His own canteen was nearly empty. His makeshift shoes had worn through completely, and he was walking barefoot on sand that burned like coals during the day and froze like ice at night. But he kept walking, because stopping meant dying, and Hyun had made a promise to get her to safety, even if it killed him. The wind started as a whisper around noon on the second day. Hyun noticed it first as a relief from the blazing heat, but within minutes that gentle breeze turned into something terrifying. Dark clouds rolled across the horizon, not rain clouds but walls of sand reaching up to the sky like giant brown waves. "Oh no," Hyun muttered, recognizing the signs. He had been through desert storms before, but never while dragging an injured person across open ground with nowhere to hide. Nara opened her eyes as the wind grew stronger. "What is happening?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the growing howl. "Sandstorm," Hyun shouted back. "A big one. We need to find shelter, but there's nothing out here." The storm hit them like a freight train. One moment Hyun could see the desert stretching ahead, and the next moment the world disappeared in a swirling brown nightmare. Sand filled the air, so thick he couldn't see his own hands. The wind screamed around them, picking up rocks and debris that stung like bullets. Hyun did the only thing he could think of. He pulled the stretcher close and threw himself over Nara, using his body as a shield. The sand and rocks hammered his back and shoulders, tearing through his uniform and into his skin. Every grain felt like a tiny knife cutting into him. "Stay. Down!" he yelled over the storm, even though he knew she couldn't move anyway. "I've got you covered." Hours passed like years. The storm showed no signs of stopping, and Hyun felt like his skin was being sandblasted off his body. His back was raw and bleeding, and sand had gotten into his eyes, nose, and mouth. Every breath was a struggle, but he didn't move. He couldn't move. If he did, the storm would tear Nara apart. Through the pain and chaos, something strange started happening. Nara began to feel things that weren't her own feelings. At first, she thought it was delirium from her injuries, but the sensations were too clear, too real. She felt Hyun's determination, solid as a rock even as his body screamed in agony. She felt his worry for her, genuine concern for someone he had just met. Most surprising of all, she felt no expectation of reward or recognition. He wasn't protecting her because he wanted something in return. He was doing it simply because it was the right thing to do. This confused her completely. In her world, the Velkari Empire, everything was about power and strength. Warriors fought for glory, for status, for territory. Leaders made alliances to gain advantage. Even acts of seeming kindness usually had hidden motives behind them. But in Hyun's mind, she found none of that calculation. Through their growing connection, she saw flashes of his memories. A young Hyun helping an elderly neighbor carry groceries upstairs. Hyun in military training, always the first to help. Our struggling teammate. Hyun treating wounded soldiers in combat, risking his life to save people he barely knew. "Why do you do this?" she managed to ask during a brief lull in the storm. Hyun's voice was rough and strained. "Do what?" "Help others, even when it hurts you." He was quiet for a moment, sand still whipping around them. "I guess, because everyone deserves a chance. Doesn't matter who they are or where they come from. If I can help, I should help." Nara had never heard anything like this before. In her world, you helped your own kind, your own family, your own empire. You helped those who could help you in return. But Hyun was helping her for no reason, except that she needed help. The storm raged on, and Hyun's body grew weaker. She could feel his exhaustion, his pain, his growing dehydration, but she also felt his resolve never wavering. He had decided to protect her, and nothing would make him stop. As the hours dragged by, the psychic connection between them grew stronger. Nara realized this was something her people called soul bonding, but it was supposed to only happen between Velkari who chose each other as life partners. She had never heard of it happening with an alien species, especially not under these circumstances. When the storm finally began to die down, Hyun was barely conscious. His back was a mess of cuts and bruises, covered in sand that had mixed with his blood to form a painful crust, but he had done it. He had shielded her through the entire storm. "You saved me," Nara whispered, as the winds finally calmed. Hyun tried to sit up, but couldn't. "That's what we do," he said weakly. "We take care of each other." Through their bond, Nara felt the truth of those words. This wasn't just what Hyun did. This was what humans did. They protected each other, even strangers, even aliens, even when it cost them everything. For the first time in her life, Queen Narathelvani of the mighty Velkari Empire realized that maybe her people had been wrong about what real strength looked like. The third morning started with hope. Hyun could see something in the distance that looked different from the endless dunes and rocks. It was too far away to make out clearly, but it had straight lines and right angles, things that didn't exist in nature. The military outpost. "We're almost there," he whispered to Nara, his voice barely a croak. His throat felt like sandpaper, and his lips were so cracked they bled when he spoke. Nara had been getting stronger throughout the night. Her wounds were healing at a rate that amazed Hyun. The silver blood had stopped flowing, and the cracks in her crystalline skin were slowly closing. Her species, she had explained, could heal from injuries that would kill a human, but it took time and energy. "You did it," she said, looking at him with those deep black eyes. "You brought me home." "Not your home," Hyun managed to smile. "But close enough." He pushed himself up and grabbed the stretcher handles one more time. Each step was torture now. His feet were raw and bleeding. His back was a mass of cuts from the sandstorm, and his body was running on nothing but willpower. But the base was right there, maybe 2 miles away. 1 mile from safety, Hyun's legs gave out. He fell face first into the sand, his body finally rebelling against the impossible demands he had placed on it. His vision went dark around the edges, and he couldn't feel his hands or feet anymore. Dehydration had pushed his body past its breaking point. "Hyun!" Nara called out, but he couldn't respond. His breathing was shallow and rapid, and his skin had turned a dangerous grey color. For the first time since the crash, Nara felt real fear. Not for herself, but for the human who had sacrificed everything to save her. Through their psychic bond, she could feel his life force fading. His body was shutting down, system by system. Nara struggled to sit up on the stretcher. Her legs were still weak, but her arms worked now. She had to do something. But what? She couldn't carry Hyun like he had carried her. She couldn't even walk that far yet. Then she remembered something her people could do that humans couldn't. Nara placed her hands on her chest and concentrated. Deep inside her body, microscopic organisms began to glow. Her species had evolved. This ability over millions of years, the power to create light from within their own cells. It was usually used for communication between Velkari ships in space, but maybe, just maybe, it could work here. Her skin began to shine with a soft blue-green light, like moonlight on water. She pushed harder, making the light brighter and brighter, until she was glowing like a beacon in the desert. The light pulsed in a specific pattern, the universal distress signal used by her people. At the military base, Sergeant Park was on watch duty when he saw something impossible through his binoculars. A strange light was flashing in the desert, too bright and too blue to be anything human-made. "Sir, you need to see this," he called to his commanding officer. Within minutes, a rescue helicopter was in the air. The pilot, Lieutenant Kim, had seen a lot of strange things in the desert, but never anything like this. A woman who seemed to be made of crystal was sitting next to an unconscious soldier, her entire body glowing like a neon sign. "Base, this is Rescue 1, Kim radioed back. "I've got one of ours down, severe heat exhaustion, and, sir, you're not going to believe what else I'm seeing out here." The rescue was swift and professional. Medics loaded Hyun into the helicopter while Nara insisted on staying by his side. His vital signs were critical. Blood pressure dangerously low, body temperature through the roof, pulse irregular. "He needs fluids immediately," the flight medic said, starting an IV line. "Another hour out there and he would have died." At the base hospital, doctors worked frantically to save Hyun's life. They pumped him full of fluids and electrolytes, cooled his body temperature, and treated his wounds. Nara waited outside the intensive care unit. Her glow dimmed to a soft shimmer. That's when the sky darkened. Massive shapes appeared overhead, ships that dwarfed any human aircraft. They were elegant and smooth, like sculptures made of liquid, metal. The largest one was easily the size of a city block, and there were dozens of them. The base alarm system went crazy. Soldiers ran to battle stations, but their weapons seemed laughably small compared to the alien fleet hanging in the sky. Above them, from the lead ship, a beam of light descended, and figures began materializing on the base landing pad. They were tall and graceful like Nara, but these wore armor that looked like it was forged from starlight itself. The one in front had insignia that clearly marked him as some kind of military commander. He approached the base commander, a colonel, named Lee, and spoke in perfect English. "I am General Christhor of the Velkari Empire. We have come for our queen." Colonel Lee looked from the alien general to the ships in the sky to the glowing woman sitting by the hospital window. "Your queen?" he asked. "The one your soldier saved," Christhor replied. "We felt her distress signal from 3 star systems away. Where is the human who carried her through the wasteland?" Inside the hospital, machines beeped steadily as Hyun's body slowly recovered from its ordeal. He was unconscious but alive. Nara sat beside his bed, one crystalline hand resting gently on his arm. She had called her people home, but now she wasn't sure she wanted to leave. Hyun woke up 3 days later, feeling like he had been hit by a truck. His throat was raw, his skin was covered in bandages, and every muscle in his body ached. But he was alive, and that was more than he had expected when he collapsed in the desert. The first thing he saw was Nara sitting in a chair beside his bed. She looked completely different now. Her crystal skin was bright and clear, her wounds had healed, and she was wearing some kind of flowing robe that seemed to change colors in the light. "You're awake," she said, and he could hear relief in her voice. "Did we make it?" Hyun asked, his voice still rough. "We made it," she smiled. "Thanks to you." A doctor came in to check on him, an older man named Dr. Choi, who seemed nervous about something. "How are you feeling, Corporal?" "Like I got dragged behind a jeep for 90 miles, Hyun replied, "but I'll live." Good, Dr. Choi said, checking his chart. "Because, there are some people who want to talk to you. Important people, very important people." Before Hyun could ask what he meant, the door opened and several men in expensive suits walked in. Behind them came military officers with more stars and ribbons than Hyun had ever seen in one place. "Corporal Lee," said one of the suits, "I'm Director Han from the Ministry of Defense. We need to discuss your situation." "What situation?" Hyun asked, confused. Nara stood up and suddenly the room felt different. Even sitting in a hospital bed, Hyun could sense her authority. "Perhaps I should explain," she said. Over the next hour, Hyun learned things that made his head spin. Nara wasn't just any alien. She was the ruler of an empire that spanned dozens of star systems. Her people, the Velkari, were thousands of years more advanced than humans, and the fleet of ships currently hovering over Earth carried enough firepower to level entire continents. "So you're actually a queen," Hyun said when she finished explaining. "I tried to tell you in the desert," Nara replied. "But yes, and your people came all this way to find you." "They did. But that's not the complicated part." Director Han leaned forward. "The complicated part, Corporal, is what the Queen has told her people about you." Hyun looked at Nara, who suddenly seemed nervous. "What did you tell them?" Nara took a deep breath. "I told them I wished to bond with you as my life mate." The room went completely silent. Hyun stared at her, sure he had misunderstood. "I'm sorry, what?" "Among my people, bonding is sacred," Nara explained. "It creates a permanent psychic connection between two souls. It cannot be broken, and it lasts for life. I have never chosen anyone before, but what happened between us in the desert, the connection we formed, I have never experienced anything like it." One of the military officers, a general named Park, spoke up. "Corporal, you need to understand what this means. The Velkari have technology that could advance human civilization by centuries, medical knowledge that could cure diseases, energy, sources that could end poverty, space travel capabilities that could take us to the stars." "And they're offering all of this?" Hyun asked. "As a wedding gift," Director Han said. "If you accept." Hyun's head was spinning. "This is crazy. I barely know her. I mean, I know her, but we spent 3 days in the desert. People don't get married because of 3 days. It's not marriage as you understand it," Nara said quietly. "Among my people, bonding is about recognizing a connection that already exists. What I felt from you during the storm, the way you protected me without asking for anything in return. My people call it soul recognition. But your people don't like me, do they?" Hyun asked. Nara's expression darkened. "Many do not. They think humans are primitive, weak. They cannot understand why I would choose someone from what they consider a lesser species. Some of them are calling it an insult to their entire civilization," General Park added. "They think you've somehow tricked or enchanted their queen. And others," Director Han said, "think it's the greatest opportunity in human history." Hyun looked around the room at all the expectant faces. Politicians who saw dollar signs, military leaders who saw weapons and ships, doctors who saw medical miracles. Everyone wanted him to say yes, but for their own reasons. "What do you want?" he asked Nara directly. She was quiet for a long moment. "I want what I felt in the desert." That connection, that purity of purpose. My people value strength, but they have forgotten that the greatest strength is choosing to help someone when you gain nothing from it. You showed me something I had never seen before. And if I say no, then I return to my people and humans continue as they were. No harm will come to Earth either way. And if I say yes, then we face whatever comes together. Some of my people will accept it, others will fight it. Your people will pressure you, use you, expect things from you that you never asked for. She reached over and took his hand. It will not be easy. Hyun stared down at their joined hands, his scarred and bandaged, hers smooth and crystalline. 3 days ago, he had been a simple soldier walking patrol. Now he was being asked to make a decision that could change the course of 2 civilizations. Can I think about it? He asked. Of course, Nara said. But Hyun, at whatever you decide, know that what happened in the desert was real. That connection we formed, it changed me. It showed me what my people have been missing. As the officials filed out of the room, Hyun lay back in his hospital bed and stared at the ceiling. He had carried an alien queen 90 miles through hell. Now she wanted to carry him into the future. 2 days after Hyun was released from the hospital, the real trouble began. A new ship arrived, smaller than the others, but somehow more intimidating. It landed directly on the military base, and from it emerged warriors who looked nothing like Nara's peaceful escort. These Velkari were built for war. Their crystalline armor was dark and angular, designed to inspire fear. Their leader was a giant even by alien standards, nearly 8 feet tall with scars across his face that glowed with a faint red light. I am General Kang of the War Council, he announced to the assembled humans. His voice was deep and harsh, nothing like Nara's musical tones. I have come to test the worthiness of this human who claims the right to bond with our queen. Hyun was still recovering, walking with a slight limp from his desert ordeal. He looked tiny next to the alien general, just an ordinary soldier who happened to be in the wrong place at the right time. Nobody's claiming anything, Hyun said calmly. I haven't even decided yet. General Kang laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Decided? Human? You think this is a choice? You think our queen can bond with whatever primitive creature she finds amusing? Kang, that's enough, Nara said, stepping between them. Even she looked small next to the war general. No, my queen. The honor of our people is at stake. If this human wishes to bond with Velkari royalty, he must prove himself worthy through combat. It is our way. The challenge was formal and public. General Kang's warriors set up an arena in the desert outside the base. Word spread quickly, and soon there were news crews and government officials gathered to watch what everyone expected to be a very short fight. The first trial was against a warrior named Captain Day. He was smaller than Kang, but still towering. Over Hyun, armed with weapons that hummed with energy and armor that seemed to absorb light. The rules are simple, General Kang announced. Combat until one yields or falls. No human weapons, no assistance. Prove you are worthy of our queen, or admit you are not. The crowd expected Hyun to at least try. Maybe grab a weapon, take a fighting stance, show some kind of warrior spirit before being inevitably defeated. Instead, he did something that shocked everyone. He sat down in the sand. I'm not fighting, Hyun said simply. General Kang's scarred face twisted in confusion. What? I said I'm not fighting. This whole thing is pointless. Captain Day looked uncertain, his energy weapons still humming but unused. The crowd murmured in confusion. Nara stepped forward, her face unreadable. You refuse to defend your honor? General Kang demanded. What honor? Hyun asked. What exactly would I be proving by fighting someone I've never met, over something I never asked for? That I can swing a sword? That I can take a beating? How does that show I'm worthy of anything? Combat shows strength, Captain Day said, finally speaking. It shows courage, skill, the will to overcome adversity. Hyun laughed, but not mockingly. You want to see strength? Real strength isn't fighting someone when you have to. Real strength is helping someone when you don't have. 2, it's carrying an injured person through the desert when you could just walk away. It's sharing your water when you're dying of thirst yourself. Pretty words, General Kang sneered. but words do not win battles. Maybe that's the problem, Hyun said, standing up and brushing sand off his pants. Maybe you've been fighting so many battles you've forgotten why you're fighting them. He walked closer to the assembled warriors, ignoring their weapons and intimidating presence. I spent 3 days with your queen. 3 days where I could have left her to die and saved myself. No one would have known. No one would have blamed me, but I didn't, because that's not who I am. That's not who humans are. Humans are weak, another warrior called out. You lack the strength to conquer, to dominate your enemies. You're right, Hyun said, surprising everyone. We are weak. Individually, we're probably the weakest intelligent species in the galaxy. We can't heal like you do. We can't glow in the dark. We don't have natural armor or psychic powers. But you know what we do have? He paused, looking around at the confused alien faces. We take care of each other. When one of us falls, the others carry them. When one of us is lost, the others go looking. When one of us is in trouble, the others drop everything to help. That's not weakness. That's the strongest thing in the universe. Nara was staring at him with something like wonder in her black eyes. Through their psychic connection, she could feel the absolute truth of his words. This wasn't a speech he had prepared. This was simply who he was. In the desert, Hyun continued, your queen saw something she had never seen before. Not a human trying to prove how tough he was, but a human doing what humans do. We help, we protect, we sacrifice. Not for glory or honor or to prove a point, but because it's the right thing to do. General Kang was silent for a long moment. And you think this makes you worthy of our queen? I think, Hyun said quietly, it makes me worthy of the connection we already have. What happened in that desert wasn't about me proving myself to her, or her testing me. It was about 2 people taking care of each other when everything else fell apart. He turned to Nara. That's what I can offer. Not conquest or domination or whatever your people think strength looks like. Just partnership. Someone who will carry you when you can't walk, and trust you to do the same for me. The arena was completely silent. Then, slowly, Nara began to glow with that soft blue-green light. General Kang, she said, her voice carrying new authority, the trial is over. This human has shown exactly the kind of strength I need in a bonded mate. Not the strength to defeat others, but the strength to lift others up. General Kang looked around at his confused warriors, then back at Hyun. I do not understand this human concept of strength. Then maybe, Nara said gently, it's time you learned. The diplomatic ceremony was supposed to be a celebration. Representatives from both Earth and the Velkari Empire had gathered in the main conference hall of the military base to formally discuss the potential bonding between Hyun and Nara. Flags from both worlds hung side by side, and translators worked frantically to bridge the communication gap between species. Hyun felt uncomfortable in his dress uniform. He was used to combat gear and desert fatigues, not the formal military dress blues they had squeezed him into for the occasion. Nara stood beside him in robes that seemed to be made of liquid starlight, her natural glow subdued, but still visible. Yufia, look nervous, she whispered to him, as diplomats from both sides gave long speeches about historic moments and interstellar cooperation. I am nervous, Hyun admitted. I'm just a soldier. I didn't sign up for all this political stuff. Neither did I, Nara said with a slight smile. But sometimes life doesn't ask what we signed up for. That's when Hyun noticed something was wrong. Among the Velkari delegation, there was a group that stood apart from the others. They were dressed in the same formal robes, but something about their posture seemed tense, ready. Their leader was someone Nara had pointed out earlier, her cousin Prince Jin. The one who wanted your throne, Hyun had asked. The one who thinks I'm destroying our civilization by choosing you, Nara had replied. Now, watching Prince Jin's cold stare, Hyun felt his soldier instincts kicking in. Something was about to happen, and it wasn't going to be good. The attack came during the gift exchange ceremony. Earth's representatives were presenting a collection of human art and music to the Velkari delegation when Prince Jin stepped forward. Before we continue this farce, Jin announced in perfect English, I must speak for those who believe our queen has been influenced by alien contamination. Jin, don't do this, Nara warned, but her cousin ignored her. Our bloodline has remained pure for 10,000 years, Jin continued, his voice rising. We will not allow it to be polluted by primitive alien DNA. That's when Hyun saw the weapons. Several of Jin's followers had concealed plasma pistols under their robes, and they were drawing them now. The human security guards reached for their guns, but they were too far away and too slow. Time seemed to slow down as Hyun saw the assassins taking aim. Not at him, at Nara. They wanted to eliminate the queen who was willing to bond with a human, making it look like a human attack gone wrong. For the second time in a week, Hyun didn't think. He just moved. The plasma blast was meant for Nara's heart. Instead, it caught Hyun in the chest as he threw himself between her and the weapon. The energy bolt felt like being hit by lightning and lava at the same time. It burned through his dress uniform and into his body, and he could smell his own flesh cooking. "Hyun!" Nara screamed as he collapsed. The room erupted in chaos. Human soldiers opened fire, Velkari guards tackled the assassins, and diplomats dove for cover behind overturned tables. But for Hyun, the noise faded to a distant buzz as his body went into shock. This wasn't like the desert where he had pushed through pain and exhaustion through sheer willpower. This was different. He could feel his life draining away, his heartbeat becoming irregular and weak. The plasma blast had done massive internal damage. Nara dropped to her knees beside him, her hands glowing as she tried to use her healing abilities. But Velkari healing worked on Velkari physiology. Human bodies were too different, too alien for her powers to help. "Don't you dare die on me," she whispered, tears streaming down her crystalline face. "Not after everything we've been through." Hyun tried to speak, but blood was filling his throat. He could see the panic in Nara's black eyes, could feel her desperation through their partially formed psychic connection. That's when it happened. As Hyun's life force began to fade, something inside Nara's mind fully awakened. The psychic bond that had been growing between them since the desert suddenly snapped into complete connection. For the first time, she experienced everything Hyun was feeling. Not just his physical pain, but his memories, his emotions, his entire sense of self. She felt his childhood, growing up poor, but loved by parents who taught him to help others. She felt his military training, where he learned that the strongest soldiers were the ones who protected their teammates. She felt his fear in the desert, not for himself, but for her, a stranger he had chosen to save. Most importantly, she felt his love. Not romantic love, they barely knew each other as people, but a deeper kind of love, the love that one conscious being can have for another simply because they exist and deserve to live. Through the bond, Hyun felt her memories too. Her loneliness as a queen who had never found anyone who understood. Her frustration with a culture that valued conquest over compassion. Her amazement at meeting someone who would sacrifice everything for a stranger. "I can save you," Nara whispered, her voice urgent. "But it will change you. Forever." Hyun tried to nod, but couldn't move. Through their connection, she felt his. "Answer, do it." Prince Jin and his surviving assassins had been subdued, but Jin was shouting over the chaos. "You see? The human contamination spreads. She will destroy us all." Ignoring him, Nara placed both hands on Hyun's chest, directly over the plasma wound. She had never attempted this before, the complete bonding process that would link their life forces permanently. It was supposed to be done slowly, carefully, with both partners healthy and prepared, but desperate times called for desperate measures. Nara's entire body began to glow brighter than anyone had ever seen, so bright that people had to shield their eyes. Energy flowed from her into Hyun, alien healing power mixing with human resilience in ways that had never been attempted before. The process was changing them both. Hyun's wound began to close, but more than that, his entire cellular structure was being altered. Nara's life force was stabilizing his, but it was also making him something new, not fully human anymore, but not Velkari either. When the light finally faded, both of them collapsed, exhausted but alive. The plasma burn on Hyun's chest had healed completely, leaving only a faint scar in the shape of Nara's handprint. But the real change was deeper. He could feel her presence in his mind now, constant and comforting, and she could feel his. "The bonding is complete," General Kang announced, his voice filled with awe. "They are joined for life." Prince Jin stared in horror. "What have you done?" Nara struggled to sit up, still holding Hyun's hand. "I've done what I should have done from the beginning," she said. "I've chosen my partner, and I've chosen love over fear." The assassination attempt had failed, but it had accomplished something the conspirators never intended. It had made the bond between two species unbreakable. In the hours after the bonding, while Hyun's body slowly recovered from the plasma blast, Nara experienced something no Velkari had ever gone through before. The complete psychic connection didn't just link their present thoughts, it opened up every memory, every emotion, every defining moment that had made Hyun who he was. She saw him as a 7-year-old boy, walking home from school when he noticed an old woman struggling with heavy grocery bags on the stairs to her apartment. While other children ran past, young Hyun stopped and offered to help. The woman was a stranger, someone who couldn't do anything for him in return, but he carried her bags up 3 flights of stairs simply because she needed help. The memory was so vivid that Nara could feel the weight of those grocery bags in her own hands, could feel the satisfaction Hyun had felt when the old woman smiled and thanked him. This wasn't heroism or glory, this was just a child doing what felt right. She saw him at 16 working part-time at a restaurant to help his family pay bills. One night, a homeless man came in asking for scraps. The manager wanted to call the police, but Hyun used his own meal break to sit with the man and share his dinner. When his co-workers asked why, Hyun just shrugged and said he was hungry. Through the bond, Nara felt Hyun's emotions during these moments. There was no calculation, no expectation of reward. He helped people because they needed help, and he was in a position to provide it. It was that simple and that profound. She experienced his military training, where his instructors noticed something unusual about the young recruit. While other soldiers focused on becoming stronger, faster, more deadly, Hyun focused on becoming better at protecting others. He volunteered for medic training, learned to drag wounded soldiers to safety under fire, always put himself between danger and those who needed protection. His drill sergeant had once asked him why he was willing to risk his life for people he barely knew. Hyun's answer echoed through Nara's consciousness. "Because if I don't, who will?" The memories flowed like a river, Hyun carrying an injured child out of a collapsed building during an earthquake, Hyun sharing his water with refugees during a humanitarian mission, Hyun staying up all night to comfort a dying soldier, holding the man's hand so he wouldn't die alone. What amazed Nara most was that Hyun never saw any of this as special. In his mind, these weren't heroic acts. They were just what people did, for each other. What humans did for each other. Through their connection, she began to understand something that shook her to her core. Her people, the mighty Velkari Empire, had achieved incredible technological advancement, had conquered star systems, had built a civilization that spanned the galaxy. But somewhere along the way, they had lost something fundamental. They had forgotten how to choose compassion over self-interest. The Velkari helped their own kind, their own families, their own empire. They were loyal to those who could benefit them, and merciless to those who couldn't. The idea of sacrificing for a stranger, of helping someone simply because they needed help, was foreign to them. But as Nara experienced Hyun's memories, she realized this wasn't weakness. It was the strongest force in the universe. Love without conditions, help without expectation, sacrifice without reward. The healing process was unlike anything in Velkari medical science. Normally, their biotechnology worked by accelerating natural healing processes, but Hyun's human physiology was different. His cells responded to the alien energy in unexpected ways. Nara found herself doing things she had never been taught, using abilities she didn't know she possessed. She was literally rebuilding Hyun's damaged tissue at the molecular level, but she was also doing something more dangerous. She was sharing her own life force with him. Her people had legends about this kind of bonding, called soul weaving in their ancient texts. It was said to be the ultimate expression of love between two beings, but it was also forbidden because it was so dangerous. If done incorrectly, Both partners could die. If done correctly, they would be linked forever, sharing not just thoughts and emotions but actual life energy. As the process continued, Hyun began to change. His human DNA was incorporating Velkari genetic material, giving him abilities no human had ever possessed. His wounds healed faster than should be possible. His senses became sharper. His mind expanded to accommodate the psychic connection. But the changes weren't just physical. Through their bond, some of Nara's knowledge and memories were flowing into Hyun as well. He began to understand Velkari language, to comprehend their technology, to see the universe from an alien perspective. Yet somehow, his essential humanity remained intact. The compassion, the willingness to help others, the instinct to protect. The vulnerable, these core aspects of who he was only grew stronger with his new abilities. When Hyun finally opened his eyes, the first thing he felt wasn't pain or confusion, but Nara's presence in his mind, like a warm light. He could sense her thoughts, her emotions, her relief that he was alive. "How do you feel?" she asked, though she could sense his answer through their connection. "Different," Hyun said, sitting up and examining his hands. They looked the same, but he could feel energy flowing through them that had never been there before. "But still, me, if that makes sense." "It makes perfect sense," Nara replied. "You're enhanced, but you're still human, still the person who carried me through the desert." Hyun looked around the medical bay, noticing details he had never been able to see before. His vision was sharper, his hearing more acute. But more than that, he could sense the emotions of everyone in the room, the curiosity of the doctors, the amazement of the diplomats, the lingering hostility from some of the Velkari delegates. "The bonding is permanent," Nara explained. "We're linked for life now. My people, your people, they'll all have to accept it." Hyun squeezed her hand, feeling the psychic connection strengthen with the physical contact. "No going back now. No going back," she agreed. "But Hyun, what I saw in your memories, what I felt of your life, my people need to learn from humans. You have something we lost long ago." "What's that?" "The courage to love strangers." Through their bond, Hyun felt her absolute certainty that this was bigger than just the two of them. This was about two civilizations learning from each other, about finding strength in compassion rather than conquest. The healing was complete, but the real journey was just beginning. The news of the successful bonding spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On the Velkari homeworld, billions of crystalline beings gathered around communication devices to witness something that had never happened in their recorded history. Their queen had bonded with an alien species and survived. In the Great Council, chambers of Velkithara, the capital city that floated among the clouds, the debate raged for days. Some council members demanded that Nara be stripped of her title for contaminating their bloodline. Others argued that the bonding had clearly been blessed by cosmic forces, since both partners had not only survived, but been strengthened by the process. General Kang, who had initially opposed the union, found himself in an unexpected position. During his time on Earth, he had observed human behavior that confused and intrigued him. He watched human soldiers risk their lives to save wounded comrades. He saw doctors work around the clock, treating patients who couldn't pay them. He witnessed ordinary people helping strangers during emergencies without being ordered to do so. "I do not fully understand these humans," he announced to the council, "but I have seen something in them that we have forgotten. They possess a strength we do not recognize, the strength to sacrifice for those who cannot repay them." Prince Jin, recovered from his failed assassination attempt but stripped of his military rank, made one last desperate argument. "These humans will make us weak. They will infect us with their primitive emotions." But his words fell on deaf ears. The successful bonding had changed everything. Ancient Velkari prophecies spoke of a time when their people would find new strength through unity with other species. Many now believed that time had come. On Earth, the reaction was equally dramatic but different. World leaders saw the alliance as humanity's greatest opportunity. The Velkari offered to share medical technology that could cure cancer, energy systems that could end poverty, and transportation methods that could take humans to the stars. But the aliens wanted something in return that no one had expected: They wanted to learn how to be human. Nara explained it to the United Nations Assembly while Hyun stood beside her, their hands linked, their psychic bond allowing them to speak with one voice. "My people have mastered technology," she said, "but we have forgotten how to master ourselves. Through my bond with Hyun, I have experienced something we lost millennia ago, the ability to choose love over logic, compassion over conquest, sacrifice over self-interest. Humans aren't perfect," Hyun added. "We make mistakes, we fight wars, we hurt each other, but we also have something that your technology can't replicate. We have hope. We believe things can get better, and we're willing to work to make them better." The exchange program that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Velkari scientists came to Earth not to study human technology, but to study human behavior. They observed teachers working with difficult students, volunteers helping at homeless shelters, rescue workers risking their lives during disasters. In return, human students traveled to Velkari worlds to learn advanced sciences and technologies. But the real education flowed both ways. Velkari engineer Captain Su spent 3 months working at a human hospital, watching doctors treat patients regardless of their ability to pay. "Where is the profit motive?" she asked Dr. Lee, confused. "There isn't one," Dr. Lee replied. "We do this because people need help." "But why would you help someone who cannot help you in return?" Dr. Lee smiled. "Because maybe someday I'll be the one who needs help." This simple concept, mutual aid based on shared vulnerability rather than mutual benefit, revolutionized Velkari thinking. Meanwhile, human engineer Commander Park worked alongside Velkari technicians to develop clean, energy systems that could power entire cities without environmental damage. The aliens' precision and efficiency, combined with human creativity and adaptability, produced innovations neither species could have achieved alone. The wedding ceremony was planned as a celebration of both cultures. The date was set for exactly 1 year after Hyun had first found Nara in the crashed ship, a desert anniversary that had become the foundation of interstellar peace. On Earth, the ceremony took place at sunrise in the same desert where their journey had begun. Representatives from every nation attended, along with Velkari dignitaries whose ships filled the sky like a second constellation. Simultaneously, on the Velkari homeworld, the ceremony was broadcast to floating cities across 3 continents. Traditional Velkari bonding rituals were combined with human wedding customs, creating something entirely new. Hyun wore a military dress uniform modified with Velkari ceremonial elements. Nara wore robes that seemed to be woven from starlight itself, but incorporated human symbols of unity and love. As they exchanged vows, their psychic bond amplified their words across both worlds. When Hyun promised to stand by Nara through desert storms and stellar winds, every human and Velkari watching felt the absolute truth of his commitment. When Nara vowed to learn from your strength and share my own, the phrase was instantly translated into dozens of languages and became a rallying cry for the new alliance. The moment they were declared bonded mates, something extraordinary happened. The psychic energy of their union, amplified by the emotional response of billions of witnesses across 2 worlds, created a brief but powerful telepathic connection between the watching crowds. For just a few seconds, humans felt what it was like to perceive the universe through Velkari senses. Velkari experienced human emotions, love, hope, determination, in their purest form. In that moment, 2 species truly understood each other. Years later, when historians wrote about the day that changed galactic civilization, they would focus on the political implications, the technological exchanges, the military alliances. But those who were there remembered something simpler and more profound. They remembered a human soldier who chose to carry a stranger through the desert and an alien queen who chose to love him for it. They remembered that the greatest strength in the universe wasn't the power to conquer others, but the courage to help them. And in the desert where it all began, a simple memorial was erected. Not to commemorate a battle or a conquest, but to mark the spot where one person's choice to help a stranger had built a bridge between the stars. The inscription, written in both human languages and Velkari script, read simply, "Here, love conquered distance." The end.